Okay, we are just getting the next panel mic'd up, so we're going to continue. I actually had a couple of comments I wanted to share. I think Anand talked about some really interesting points. Your attention, please. Anand brought up some really interesting points, and I think Anand's still in the room, about the notion of around brands and brands engaging with consumers. And I think that's really a space that's taken off tremendously. And it's a space that we should be watching as well. At the same time, I think there's an opportunity for not just brands, but for enterprises to rethink, I think, three broad dimensions. One, as Anand highlighted, the notion of experience. Two, the notion of product. Not just physical products, but dematerialized products. I think that's a lovely term. But not just the dematerialized product on its own, but a natural extension to physical products. So they come almost as a couple. And three, about new experiences and new ways of working. Because I think we're at a very early stage in how we're going to set all this up. So one area that we're going to talk about even more throughout the rest of the afternoon. So I think we're all ready, I believe. Yes. Okay, so for our next session, we have a keynote presentation. I see our keynote speaker coming up, talking about cybersecurity and policing in the metaverse. So some of you may know or be aware of, Interpol released a study on the metaverse and the implications of policing there. So really fascinating topic. So I hope Jack will be sharing more about his perspective on this. Your speaker, let me share a few points, has a lot of accolades, including being an innovator in residence at Jacobs Institute of Design Innovation at UC Berkeley. He's a professor at UC Berkeley, co-founder of Oculus, an engineer, a hardware designer, an inventor, a video game developer, and a philanthropist. So if I can achieve at least one of those things, it would be a good thing. So please welcome Jack Macaulay onto stage. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you. So my name is Jack Macaulay. I'm a video game engineer. I've been doing video game design and engineering for about 40 years, starting in college, out of college, and that's basically what I've done. I've done other things too. When I got interested in cars, I would do a car thing or something like that. But I want to talk to you about my former company, Oculus. We were purchased by Facebook in 2014. I got word of it when I was in a hotel room. 2 o'clock in the morning, my boss called me and said, "Guess what?" And so that was the beginning of my short term at Facebook. I worked there like 6 months, and I quit because I was too old. That's what I was thinking at the time. I couldn't keep up with these young people doing this programming and so forth. But I'm a hardware engineer principally, but I'm also a programmer. I do both of those skills. Currently teaching at UC Berkeley. I teach vehicle engineering, vehicle dynamics, not related to video games. It kind of is a little bit, but that's what I'm doing now. Physics. Sorry. Okay, that's me. That picture in the center there, that is in 2013 at Oculus. That was our first room experience headset we built. It was 2 Samsung phones stuck together with a bunch of software and pasted onto your head with some lenses. That was it. And those markers in the background, those look like QR codes, exactly what they are. You could tell where you were in the room by it would register the QR code, could tell what position you were at. So the thing on the right is I built that in '87. I used to work at Logitech. They're a mouse company, and I built stuff for them. But I finished that in '87, and that's my other claim to fame is I built a scrolling mouse. This is like version 8. It didn't quite look like this, but pretty close. I'm a Math and Science Research Institute board member. I've got a strong technical background, and I have a high level of education, thanks mostly to the taxpayers in California. And I have a program at Rand Institute to study the fentanyl crisis, which is affecting the United States right now. There is an illegal drug coming over the border. We're trying to figure out what to do about it. And I'm a trustee at the university and an Asia Society board member. I spent a lot of time in Asia because of my career. I had to go do the manufacturing over there, especially at Oculus. At Oculus, I ran their engineering and manufacturing. I was the guy doing all the engineering stuff, running the team there. And I had some really talented people working there. A lot of young people. The co-founder was 19. And the other guys are a little bit older, not much. One guy was 24, the other guy was 31. The oldest guy was 30. I was the oldest guy. Another guy was 31. And I have a foundation. It's an education foundation where I do donate money to education. So this picture here is World War I. And I'll tell you about my experience. This is just my experience. Tech comes first. The invention comes first. Society's behind that in time. The tech develops and the society learns to adjust to it. And in World War I, this is from World War I, and I think these are Brits here, they were able to fire a shell for 8 miles in an arc and land it on people very accurately, soldiers. And so what did they do? They dug a hole in the ground, they laid down in a hole to get away from it. The development of munitions and artillery was way ahead of strategy and tactics for the military and how to deal with it, such as technology. This thing comes around in 2007, iPhone 1. It's had, to put it mildly, a profound effect on culture and society worldwide. Instantaneous communication. You can do things that you could never do before. And it's also a part of the problem. So Abraham Lincoln was a president of the United States, and when he wrote a letter, when he was angry, he called it a hot letter. And by the time he got down to the bottom of the letter, he says, "Nah, I'm not going to send that." Well, with a digital device, you kind of don't do that. You type it in and you hit the go button, you hit the send button, and it goes off, and then you go, why did I say that? So I think it's had a really negative impact on society in general, and we're still learning to adjust to it. It causes, I think a lot of what I see in especially younger generation, mental health issues and so forth, comes around like bullying on the phone, like people bullying each other and so forth. I think it's just negative. The good side is with like Facebook, I use Facebook. I'm on it all the time to watch my family members, see what they're doing and so forth. I think that's kind of a good positive thing. Some of the other stuff about Facebook I'm not crazy about. And I'll get into that in a second, but I'll talk about the metaverse because I know quite a bit about it. We were talking about this at Oculus. There was a lot of conversations about what it would be. And it would be a virtual world with its own currency and own policing and policies. And it would be, the policies and policing would be agnostic. In other words, they wouldn't have a bias in them. And then I watch Facebook and what's happening there with their user base, people leaving the platform right now like crazy. Part of that is TikTok. They've lost users to TikTok. But a lot is the way the platform is being curated and the bias it inserts into Facebook, which is driving people away from it. Younger users aren't using it. Instagram is losing users, and Facebook stock value is 1/3 of what it was in July of last year, unfortunately for me. So I think this phone has had a profound effect on society. I don't think it's all positive either. I think there's really some weird stuff that's happening. I like it because I can track my loved ones and family members and so forth. Money and power. These two guys have a lot of money. This guy in the middle here, that's Mark Zuckerberg. He's great. He bought my business. That was a good thing. The guy, the Twitter guy, that's Jack Dorsey. He also has a lot of money and power. But what they both lack is wisdom. And I think their deficit is in being wise and how to use the power that they have. So how does this tie into the metaverse? Well, there needs to be a way of doing policing without a bias associated with it. Now, I'll tell you just a quick story. I'm going to run out of time here pretty quick. About 10 years ago, I heard that the Justice Department of the United States was unfairly prosecuting African Americans. And I heard this, and I go, that can't be true. It's blind, right? Holding the scale and the blindfold on it. In fact, when I looked into it, I got stuff from the Justice Department start pouring over it? There's a really big bias in it. And so why can't there be a system that doesn't have the kinds of biases? So back to this metaverse thing, I worked on cybersecurity for the entire year last year. From January to December, I have a private research facility with engineers and so forth. And we were looking at threat mitigation, and particularly with cybersecurity and drones. These drones are a threat. Angela Merkel's talking and someone flies a drone up on the stage with her. They're very dangerous. You can take one of these things and put them and hibernate them and fly it remotely with a phone from another country and fly it around. So it's dangerous. So we built this system here. It's handheld, and you point at the drone, and it basically takes the drone out. This is Skynet off Terminator. I worked on Terminator 2, the sound system on that years ago. But this is a proprietary cellular tower which we built. And the purpose of this thing was to find out what loopholes there are in cybersecurity in the cellular system. And it's rich with problems. So this is something we built to explore that. And this is, some of you might be familiar with these kinds of things. This is a deauthing tool. I paid $5 for this on Amazon. I'm able to take your computer off the access point temporarily, but I can do it. Any computer, if they have a certain level of security, and most of the access points have low security settings. Okay, so I'm going to run out of time, but I'll just run through this really quickly. These are the problems I found with cybersecurity. WPA2, which is the security stuff, and most access points is full of loopholes. LTE and 4G and 5G is not as vulnerable to being hacked and attacked, but you can do it. It's really hard to jam LTE phones and 4G and 5G phones at different bands. It's very difficult to do that. The data is vulnerable at the tower, the cell tower. So your privacy is a problem. We did a lot of work in the cybersecurity, and this is sort of tying into the whole AI thing. It's the end of my presentation here, but we were able to use Linux laptop and some software we got off online, just found it online, to go in and take the camera feed off of an interior Wi-Fi based camera, and you could see inside someone's house with it. It's just crazy. All right, so what is the metaverse? I got 3 minutes left. A virtual world where you can live and thrive and exist. That's a really cool idea. Free of life's problems, you can have everything you want. You could live in any kind of apartment in a high-rise or on the beach, whatever. And there's a lot of inhibitors to that, though. And to get back to my original point about the sort of bias that's inserted by human beings, there has to be a policing system which is agnostic. And so what is agnostic? Well, AI could be agnostic. AI, artificial intelligence, can be agnostic, can be taught to be agnostic, and treat, unlike the Justice Department of the United States, treat people equally. And so there are many challenges ahead for Meta, Facebook. I alluded to those. The declining user base. You see Facebook, when they bought the business, Facebook is not a video game company. They're not run like one. Video game companies are really loose and run, and they're creative people there, and you can't have like rigid rules and so forth, else you drive those people away. And so they're an advertising company. They sell ads. That's how they get their revenue. And so I think that they're going to be challenged, especially with Horizon, which is one of their applications, to get that to work with their current user base and who they have as their audience. So I'll be honest, I stole this slide. I think it's very good. So I'm going to just talk about this briefly here. So the experience, they sort of focused on the entertainment component of it, the visual part of it, and shopping and so forth, and watching movies and so forth. And then discovery is ad networks, social curation. This is the problem, social curation. Who's going to curate the metaverse? Who's responsible for doing that? It's a person. We already see what happens when a person curates things. Mark Zuckerberg bragged that he spent $16 billion on cleaning up the platform, and it's actually kind of worse now than it was before. Decentralized computing system, which is a cloud-based sort of computing system with decentralized computing power. They have that. Facebook's very strong in that area. They've got that. And then the human interface. What is it that people will do in the metaverse? Well, most people have this thing, and it's not a pair of goggles, and this has the power of a PlayStation 4. It does. It has that kind of power. If I were them, I'd put it on this. Everyone has one with them. It's either be it Android or iOS, you have one. And the big problem which we had at Oculus is the bandwidth. Like, how do you get images, stream video into the headset? How do you do that with 4G or LTE? It just can't really be done. But 5G has better promise. Is 6G that's coming up on the horizon here. So the remote rendering of the images and the scenery, it would alleviate the headset from having to have so much power and make it cheaper. The big problem, of course, who has worn a VR headset, like the Quest? Okay. Who feels dizzy when they wear it? Yeah, that's a big problem. There's like 10% of the people we tested it on, it makes us sick. I don't know how they're going to get around that problem. That's a vestibular issue, balance issue. And so it has to do with the way the ears hear things and the way your body perceives them, your motion and so forth. So that is the problem that has to be addressed. And I don't think it can be. I don't think there's a solution to that. And it's caused by perturbations and triggers in your vestibular system. Okay, back to the curation part. I think this type of topology here, the neural network, is a good start to try to get an agnostic curation on a virtual world like this. Okay, I've got a few minutes for questions. Perhaps I can advance my slides. I have 15 minutes and take the questions. Does that sound right? Anyone have any questions? Okay. So, yes? Sure.
You talked about cybersecurity, and you talked about the notion of unconscious or sort of ensuring that there's bias is removed or at least systematically taken out. What would be your advice to an audience and also generally? And what are the three things, the few things that you need to keep in mind as you start to experience the metaverse and given the fact that these platforms are run by big tech, such as Facebook?
Well, I don't think that Facebook, as it's structured now as a company, can do an unbiased metaverse. I don't think they can the way they're structured now. I think they would have to change the culture within the company. That's the problem I had with it. I didn't fit in there. I'm a video game guy, and they're not. And I was like, looking around at people, I go, where's the studio? There's no studio, or there's no artist and stuff. It's just not for me. So I think they need to change that, and I don't know that they're capable of doing that. I'm not sure that they can do that. And one of the things they say is to keep Mark happy, keep Mark happy, KMH. And that's the problem, is that he's in love with VR, and he's in love with the metaverse and the technology, but he's put himself as the center of its architecture, in my view. This is just my view. Maybe some other people think that. So I think that has to be fixed, and it's very difficult when you own a company like that to let go. It is. It's hard to do. So, any other questions? Tough crowd. Yes. So, Mike.
Hi, thank you for such a nice talk. You talk about cybersecurity. You also talk about, this Oculus camera, Oculus that can make you, look into a different universe and metaverse, right? So how does it all link together? Because there's different parts of this policing inside metaverse. There is the cybersecurity part that you talk about in terms of data transmission. Like, are these all linked together, or is it all separate?
Well, I don't know that metaverse necessarily has issues with cybersecurity as it does the way the democracy is handled in the platform. This is my thinking. And the problem with doing the way the things have been done with Facebook, especially with their curation and messaging and so forth, is that won't fit well in a metaverse. There can't be a central god that monitors everything and then deletes people that doesn't agree with, which is kind of what's happening now. It's the way that kind of works. You can get bumped off Facebook for saying just stupid things, and it doesn't make sense. It's not well done. You get penalized for saying things that they don't agree with, that don't fit a certain profile of acceptable arguments, so forth. Yes.
Thank you very much. How can we not do the same mistake that we did with social media, with now Web 1.3? Because now with privacy, as we talked about, having Meta or Facebook controlling this new universe, they have bad history with this. So how can we avoid the same mistake that we have already done?
Well, I think to a certain degree, Apple is a whole platform. They have Apple Music, Apple TV. They have an app store that they get revenue from. It's a pretty good model, and it's been pretty successful without the sort of issues that Facebook has had. And Facebook, when they look at a company like Apple, they want to be like Apple. They want that, but they're just not set up to do that, in my opinion. It's just not the culture of the company. It has to be changed. It has to change from within, I think. Thank you. Thank you.